So I wanted to change before I made this video, and then I realized that I'm wearing a shirt that says Abbey Road, which is perfect because I want to tell you about Abby's story. This is Abbey. And she has fought harder to survive than I ever will. A few years ago, before she was rescued by Ching Sanctuary, her flock was attacked by dogs, and she saw everyone she knew die. But Abbey hung on to life. And humans took her into her home, and they gave her food and water, and she fought to come back. And that should have been the end of her struggle. But then 3 weeks ago, we noticed her acting a little odd, and so we picked her up and we took her inside the house and we examined her, and we found that a fly had laid eggs inside of a wound in her body, and maggots were eating her alive from the inside. So we rushed her to a vet, and they started flushing out her wound, and she was getting weaker from the pain. And in the middle of her treatment, the vet lifted up her body, and her head was limp, and she wasn't moving. And he said, "I think we've lost her." And I started to cry because we hadn't found her sooner. And he started issuing chest compressions. And after a few minutes of CPR, one of the vet techs said, "I think I just saw her beak move." And she came back. She fought to live. I took her home and I held her as Lorraine and I picked out the final 80 maggots from a cavity in her body. And then we held food and water up to her beak and we watched her heal herself. One day I walked into her room and I started to panic because she wasn't sitting inside of her crate where she usually was, and she wasn't walking around. And then I looked up and I noticed that she was perched on top of her crate. And that was a really good sign. And then a few days later, when I picked her up to examine her wound, she pecked at me because she doesn't like to be held. And that was another good sign, and that made me smile. Chickens are not weak. Abbey is strong. And like her sisters out in the world being used for food, she wants to live. She wants to scratch at the ground and dust bathe and perch as long as her body will let her, just like us. We owe it to Abbey to respect her desire to live and to fight for her sisters' lives as well. They want to live, and I will fight for their right to live until they are all free.